for her excellence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. I say and still I rise because I have been censured, but I'd like to assure people that I have not been silenced. Censured, but not silenced. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, proud to say that I am an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community, an ally. And I rise as an ally, Mr. Speaker, to acknowledge that HRES 550, the original LGBTQIA Pride Month resolution of 1925, is a part of the history of the records of the House of Representatives. This resolution is a resolution that I'm honored to present annually, and it speaks to the accomplishments of the community, but it also addresses many of the things that are shortcomings in our society as they impact the community. So I'm proud today to rise and say that as an ally of the community, this resolution has 125 co-sponsors. For many, that might not seem like a lot, but I can recall a time when we had many persons who wanted to sign on, but for reasons that were associated with elections and politics, they would not sign on. I think people are overcoming those concerns and those fears, and they're recognizing the fact that we ought not discriminate against people because of who they are. I believe that it would be beneficial for people to talk to people who are from the community before drawing conclusions. I especially say this as it relates to the trans community. There are many issues to be discussed about the trans community, but today I just want to acknowledge that having talked to people from the trans community, having had an opportunity to have dialogue where I can ask questions and get answers from the people themselves, I have come to a conclusion that this community exists because people literally want to be themselves. I spoke to a trans person who informed me that this person, without giving any hint as to whom it is, because the person has spoken to me in confidence, but this person indicated that since the person could recognize the image in a mirror, the person realized that there was a need to have a different image because the person wanted to be of a different sex than the person was assigned at birth. I have talked to more than one person who has given me similar evidence. I think we ought to believe people when they say this. I just don't think that people will go out of their way to try to convince you that this is appropriate and would do some of the things necessary to identify themselves properly just to get attention. Nobody wants to get attention by having surgery that costs thousands of dollars. Nobody wants to get attention by having to face a society that rejects too often people because they don't understand who they are and what they're all about. We're talking about people who just want to live their lives and be left alone. They're not trying to impose themselves upon other people. These are decent human beings who just want to be left alone and be allowed to be themselves. I cannot for the life of me understand how someone could see this as harmful to society in the main. I have myself been discriminated against. Having been born a son of the segregated South, having been born an African American, I have been discriminated against. I can remember when I had to go to the back door to get food simply because of how I looked. Had nothing to do with any behavior that I exhibited. Just because of the color of my skin, I had to go to back doors. I had to drink from a filthy colored water fountain with a pristine white water fountain next to it, simply because of the color of my skin and how I looked. I had to sit in the balcony of the movie and the back of the bus simply because of how I looked. And I am so grateful to God for having me have those experiences, because it gives me some sense of appreciation for what others go through simply because of who they say they are. We cannot have the great country that we claim we are if we will continue to discriminate against people because of who they say they are. This is the United States of America. Liberty and justice for all. That has to include the trans community. It really does have to include it to the extent that they can walk the streets and not be in fear. There are still people who will harm members of the trans community if they can catch them at a certain place at a certain time when nobody's looking, just because of who they are. We talk about other people living in fear, and I think we should, because there are others living in fear as well. But little attention is given to this community and the fear that it has to live and coexist with simply because of who they say they are. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to have this resolution presented today. I plan to continue to introduce the Pride Resolution. I've been doing so for some time now. I had the honor of serving with the Honorable Barney Frank when I was in Congress. The Honorable Barney Frank, as a member of Congress from 1981 to 2013, is recognized in this resolution as an honorary co-sponsor of the resolution. This resolution tracks the history of persons having the opportunity to first embrace themselves with the protestation that started and to move on to the point where now persons can actually embrace marriage and live with the person and love with the person that they choose. As an ally of this community, I find none of this offensive. I find all of this to be natural for human beings who want to just simply be themselves. I am also honored to tell you that in Houston, Texas, not only will this resolution be celebrated, but also there is a pride parade that will rival any parade in this country. People show up in the thousands, the tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands, and they align the streets and they celebrate and some, to a certain extent, commemorate lives that have been lost because they are simply a part of this community. But this is something that I would hope we could see around the country to a greater extent than we see it. Houston, Texas has embraced it. Many other places have. But until it's embraced in the small towns, in the boroughs, in places where people are now at some point, in some places, afraid to announce who they are, until this attitude of pride is embraced by the workplace, workplaces where people cannot indicate who they are because if they do, they're likely to lose their jobs. Until that same level of pride, that same spirit of embracing people as who they are, judging them by the content of their character, not what they believe them to be within. I think we ought to believe people when they tell you who they are. So today, my prayer is that this Pride resolution will inspire people to do more than simply say hello, but will become an ally. I'm recruiting. The Pride community needs allies, needs people who are willing to stand up publicly and say, I am an ally of the community. And when you do this, I assure you, you will be doing what is expected of people of goodwill who want to see people simply live their lives, enjoy who they are, just simply be themselves. You will promote and you will help to cause a good many people that you may never meet and greet to benefit from another person becoming an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community. I'll close with this. The LGBTQIA community does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a country that prides itself in pledging liberty and justice for all. This is an opportunity for every person who's never had the opportunity to talk to a person from this community to just do so. And I guarantee you, if you do so, you'll leave with a different attitude. I absolutely believe this. And I also say to you, don't worry about the Pride community trying to impose anything on you. If you don't know a person from the community, you are not likely to be invited to a wedding. So you don't have to worry about some imposition. Just worry about making America all that it claims it is. I plan to do it, and I invite others to do so as well. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields.